Hi guys, I'm Alex.
I'm Krista.
And today we are going to start our educational series on how to use some more advanced training techniques for you guys to get your gains. Today we're going to be talking about the use of bands. Krista's going to be our model for all of our exercises today. We are going to be going over accommodating resistance, reverse banding, and finally over vector training, which are all three things that you can do with bands that will help you achieve different results depending on where you are in your training journey. So, starting with accommodating resistance. So we have set up in this rack a barbell with plates and a band that goes over the bar. So accommodating resistance is normally done with bands or chains. Today we're not going to see chains, we're going to focus on bands. And the purpose of it is to modify the strength curve of an exercise. So all exercises, what they have is, as you perform them, for the most part when they're free weight, the way your body requires strain changes depending on where the bar or weight is. So for example, at the bottom of a deadlift, we require the most amount of force, and at the top of the deadlift, we require the least amount of force. So the bands, what they do is that they help regulate that curve so that at the bottom of the deadlift, there'll be a certain amount of weight with the band, and as the weight goes up, the band is going to pull the bar down and increase how much weight is on the bar. Therefore, we will increase how much weight there is at the top, which is not something that would normally happen. So Krista, if you can show us a few repetitions. So see, you guys can see how the band is pulling the bar down as the bar goes up. Now give me a nice explosive one. Boom. So, thank you, Krista. So with the bands, what you guys are seeing too is there's also another factor that comes into play of what you get when you're training with them, which is rate of force production. So the way bands are is, if the longer you take to raise the weight, the more you have to carry the weight of the band. So bands are really useful for training power generation. If you want your deadlift or your squat or your forward jump to be explosive, fighting against the band cues you to try to get there before the band pulls you back, because there's always a slight delay in feeling the weight of the band before it affects your body. So on the deadlift, there's an extra consideration to be made for accommodating resistance, and there's one more advantage of using bands. You can also work partial ranges of motion with accommodating resistance. Krista, let's get some bands and let's set this up. Let's suppose that our athlete has issues at not the bottom part of the deadlift, but right as the bar is hitting knee height. What we're going to do is we're going to add a band at the height of when this happens. And then Krista, show us 2 repetitions. And as you guys will see, as she raises the weight, she's gonna meet that second band and add the weight of that second band to her lift. So in this case, we're leaving the first band just so that you guys can continuously see the accommodating resistance happening from the bottom. One more, Krista. But you can see how this strategy can permit you, thank you, to be able to basically target weaknesses. So this is used amply in powerlifting. But it also has other purposes that you can apply for sports and other types of athletic endeavors. So in this case, we just set up 3 pins to show off the full lockout. Krista, let's get the last band. And so with this last band, we're gonna make the very topmost of the deadlift particularly challenging to whoever athlete is going to perform it. Nice. One more. So if you guys want to set this up, the most important part is, where are you going to have your anchor points? Having a square rack to do it is the easiest way to go about it, because then you have space to put pins at whatever height you require to set up the bands. But if you do not own a rack, at the very least, you can set this up with bands with heavy dumbbells. You just put 4 points as anchor points, and then you just go at it. You want the band to go straight down, and therefore you want that connecting point of the band to be a little bit farther away from your rack point. This is very important because otherwise, if you guys band from where the rack is banded, the band is gonna be at an angle and it's gonna be pulling the bar forward. That's gonna change the mechanics of your squat. So Krista, can you show us some squats? You guys will notice here as she picks up the bar that she basically ends up standing right above the band point, and then the band is just gonna pull her straight down. So just like the deadlift, the banded barbell squat is going to accommodate the strength curve for Krista. This is gonna make it so that the top of the squat is harder and the bottom of the squat is easier. Thank you, Krista. What this means is that it's going to fundamentally make the top part of the squat, which is the easiest, harder, and permit you guys to basically train more weight for the top part of the movement. This variation is great for vertical jumping. It's very, very useful when you're trying to go up in full speed, trying to accelerate the bar as you fight against the band. So what we're going to show you case now is another very important variation for barbell squats, which is reverse banding. All right, so what we have for you guys now is a reverse band setup. So as you guys can see, we have a pin at the top where the bands are dropping down into the bar. So reverse band setups are particularly useful for when you want to teach your body how heavy weight feels, especially with the barbell movements. So when we have the band coming from down, it's always pulling you down. But when the band is pulling it up, it basically does the same form of strength curve. Like it still reduces weight at the bottom and it basically lets you feel the whole weight at the top. The main difference is that the way a movement banded from the bottom feels to reverse banding is different. Here at the top, you are gonna feel the weight of the bar and the plates. So for example, for Krista, we added another 25-pound plate onto the banded setup, just so that she will have more weight to showcase off this setup. Krista, if you can, please. So you guys can see how her upper body has to tighten way more to produce tension with this weight compared to before, but at the bottom, it's easy for her to go back up. She should be experiencing about the same amount of weight that she was doing with a 25-pound plate and a red band, just because of the resistance these particular bands provide. And so this is a useful variation for when you, thank you, Krista, for when you want to train those positions and start getting used to more and more weight. This technique is particularly useful for when you're wanting to start going above the 300 pounds. It's also very useful, for example, for leg presses. You can do a reverse banded on the machine. You just have to set it up from the machine itself, and some machines don't have anchor points. This is very useful for bench press as well and shoulder press. In particular, for girls that can't carry the bar, a reverse band setup with a barbell, a 45-pound barbell, is really useful to start being able to just do the movement. So for example, some exercises that we do here, which is like a single arm shoulder press with a bar, our lightest bar is 15 pounds, but sometimes 15 pounds is still too heavy for one arm. You do a reverse band setup and the person will be able to do it. And so it's a good way to start getting used to the bar if you can carry the bar, for those of you who are just barely starting. All right, so we are going to start now showcasing off what vector training is. So force vector training is basically adding lines of force to a particular exercise to train a different aspect of that exercise. So any free weight exercise has one fundamental vector, and that is gravity. Gravity is up and down. That means that no matter what you do, the force vector of that free weight is always pushing down. So when, for example, you want to train some muscles that work better not in a vertical plane, bands can be very useful to activate those muscles more. In this case, we're gonna showcase off different ways that you can band a deadlift to change the focus by manipulation of force vectors. The first one that we plan for you guys is the band at the waist. So the glutes, the way that they're designed to work is when the glute is stretched, which is normally when the leg is bent, that is when it can maximally offer, that is when it can really engage and produce force, especially for deadlifts and squats. At the top of the movements, when you're standing straight, and that's when the glute is maximally contracted, there's not a lot of weight that the butt is actually carrying. So for example, it's useless for you guys to squish your butts at the top of a squat or a deadlift. You can do it if it feels good, but fundamentally it's not loaded with weight. However, if you add a band, the band is trying to open up the hip, and therefore the top of the movement becomes more biased towards the butt. So Krista, can you please showcase off some repetitions? You guys will notice she puts the band up to her hip. So when you guys are setting up, you gotta make sure that when the band is pulling behind you, it doesn't make you lose your balance. So you gotta practice a little bit that center of mass. And then as you go up, you will notice that Krista has a slight angle forward. This is due to the band. It will help her have more tension into her butt, and it will bias the deadlift into glute deadlift, if you will. So this is not the only thing that you can do force vector wise with the deadlift. The other important muscle to cue would be how much engagement of the lats you're having. So for example, if you wanted to play more with this, you would grab two bands and then we would set them up towards the front of the rack. So this is a particular variation that I've used with some of my clients when they have issues engaging their lats and really pulling back with their back. But you'll notice that as she pulls, the bands are pulling the bar forward, so she has to pull it back so that she can maximally stand up straight. Do you feel that more in your lats?
Yes.
All right. So this is an easy example of force vectors in a traditional exercise, right? You could use the band for squats as well, though it doesn't give as much dividends as with the deadlift. You could also bend the knees in case you want to do a little bit more of a BMO activation. That's mostly a more niche exercise that doesn't really produce muscle gains. And the band in the front is a coaching technique. So I don't recommend you work out with it. It's more to teach someone how to engage their back more. However, this band on the hip, it's really good. Amply recommended. If you guys haven't tried it out, it works really well with a kettlebell instead of a barbell. And it'll just cue you to use your butt more during a deadlift. So that's kind of like, that's it for us for today, guys. If you have any questions, please write them in the comments below. We always welcome questions, and we'll pop up some more advanced training techniques on our next video. Thanks for watching.